This is Family Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Andrew Beaulieu, and founder of Bold Moves Coaching and Consulting. And I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So we've got your link below, and I want to let everybody know that's fully clickable when we're published, so you don't have to remember it. It will be up, but you don't have to remember to type it. But we have www.boldmovescoaching.ca, and you're in Canada, right?
Yeah, I'm based out of Montreal.
Yeah, so we always encourage people to click on those later today. When we're fully published, you'll be able to click through. And what we're going to talk about today is the concept of embracing an unknown in career transitions, the bold moves. But before we get to that, we always ask everybody who comes on the podcast a couple questions initially, like what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
What motivates me is really being able to build connections with people. Building relationships with people is really what motivates me. So in my corporate life prior to this, I worked for 16 years in my family business, and I was a manager at a young age, and really just having the ability to work with other people. And I adopted a servant leadership style very young, and just being able to pour myself into helping people always gave me energy, always motivated me, always made me want to be better. It's ultimately what brought me to coaching. Um, why do I do what I do is because the family business was construction, and the
Mhm.
construction part was getting in the way of what I actually like, which is helping people. So at a certain point, there was a conflict of interest, and I had to make a decision. So I said, what can I do where I take the people out, making them my primary focus? And I had a life coach for many years, and I said, she's inspired me. She's helped me become a better version of myself. So if I can do that for somebody else, I think that would feel pretty cool. And so I went through a whole certification process and discovered I really enjoy it. It's really energizing, it's fulfilling, and I help people, and that's kind of cool. So that's what motivates me, and that's why I do it.
Was that hard to get out of the family business? Did you have pressure to try to stay in?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually resigned to my father, who had retired already, and my two brothers were also in the business, and we were partners. We took over my dad's 50% when he retired, and I resigned before I knew what I wanted to do. I just knew I needed to cut off that safety net, or else I would
Mhm.
never even explore, what's out there. And I like to say they went through the seven emotions. There's times where there is some anger, some sadness. My brothers, when we agreed to take over the family business, because it wasn't forced on us, it was offered to us. We made a deal together, like we'll do it together, and as long as we're together, we'll do it. And then I kind of exit stage left. So like,
So,
what are you doing?
what are you doing there? It's like,
Yeah, so there's some feelings of guilt and resentment, but there's a lot of support too, and ultimately we're better and stronger for it today. But definitely emotionally charged. It's an added layer to
Mhm.
transitioning careers, an added layer when it's a family business, and an added layer that I was an owner of the business.
And you were talking about how you had a life coach. So was it a bit like a hard process to get to the point where you were saying, "Hey, this isn't for me"? And did you have the life coach kind of help you guide you with that, or you were already in making that decision before you talked to the life coach?
Yeah, I already made the decision before I reached out to my coach. So it was a coach that I had met through the company when we were transitioning from directors to owners. My father was retired, and they hired a change management coach. And her and I clicked, like on a personal level. We just always stayed in touch after that. Her contract was actually up for a couple of years before I made this decision to leave. And so I made the decision. Then I reached out to her and said, "Hey, I just quit my family business. What do I do next?"
Mhm.
So it's kind of used her for the discovery portion, but not necessarily the lead up to I'm
Mhm.
leaving.
That's interesting. So working with your life coach, you started to realize that you liked that experience, and you started to feel like you could get into that you could be part of that process. Right?
Yeah.
Was that something that took months or years, or how long did that take you to realize that?
It took me about a month. Had to, I was in fast track of reflection mode. So every day I was thinking, what can I do? What can I do? What do I like? Speaking to my wife, my friends, saying, what are my strengths? What brings me joy, makes me happy? Because ultimately it was a transition of fulfillment. I wanted to be more happy in my
Mhm.
life. Um, And it was really on a drive home. I remember it vividly. I was driving home and thinking of her and saying, well, I have a meeting with her tonight. What am I going to do? And then it was kind of like a light bulb. I'm like, oh, what she does kind of intrigues me. And so I went back and I said, hey, I jumped on a call with her and I said, hey, I don't mean to be insulting, but like, what if I did what you do? Not being presumptuous that I can do what you do, but what if I
Yeah.
did that? And she's like, huh. She's like, that's really interesting. But after that conversation, I did go through a career counselor where they bring you through all the psychometric evaluations. I think I did 4 or 5 evaluations, and they come back with career options. And coaching was top
Right,
3
right there. Yeah. So
right there.
you're right on it. But sometimes
Oh,
you just kind of feel it. Like, like if somebody touches the piano and it's like with no training at all, they already have like an aptitude.
they have the ear for it. Yeah, exactly.
My brother, he couldn't get piano, but when he jumped on the guitar, he could do it. And so
That's amazing.
as I say, sometimes you just fit. And I know guys that jumped on a sax and then like they just got it. And
Natural skill. Natural
just,
skill.
yeah, just sometimes you just have this thing and you get drawn like law of attraction. I'm a big
Right.
believer in that. You get drawn to the things that kind of like you're radiating this energy or you're radiating these vibrations. And so if you're in tune, you pick up what actually is like more conducive to where you want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
and then the law of attraction, it brings you go there. It can go negative or positive. Like you can be drawn to negative people if you're putting out negative vibrations. If you're putting out the positive vibrations, it can go either way. It's like balance. And so
Exactly.
learning how to like understand and listen to yourself and then to other people and then process it, I think is part of the whole, lessons learned. But like when you get into career transition, when you meet people, do a lot of people like, do they actually, and they come to you, they must realize that that's what they want to do, or are they kind of searching for what they want to do? And this is one thing that they're thinking about.
A lot of people, I mean, like the real answer is depends, right? Because everyone comes from a different context. So some people, their positions were abolished. Some people, they quit their job because they were frustrated. Others just want to transition, do a lateral move. Others want a complete rediscovery, re-identity of who they want to be. But it's always driven from them. It has to start with self saying something's not right where I am right now, and I need change. And that's the bold move. Actually, the bold move is not changing careers. The bold move is coming to discovering of who you are at a core level and giving it permission to live into that. And that's the bold move, because most people will fight that, because oftentimes it goes against your environment, or it goes against a social construct, or it goes against, what people say, no, you can't do that. Well, why would you do that? You're crazy for doing that. So the bold move is listening to yourself and saying, I am going to do that. I'm going to explore this and see where it goes. And if that's not it, I'll keep going till I find something that sticks, right? Coaching for me, it was my first step. And luckily I really enjoy it. And I feel like I have a skill set for it. But if it wasn't that, I would have continued looking, because I knew in my core it wasn't the family business.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, like what you're saying is that people get in a box, whether it's like family obligation or family business, or like you're told from a young age, well, you should go toward being a doctor or a lawyer or a profession, and you're kind of guided toward that. And you might not even question what, once you have your PhD, once you have your CPA, once you have your law degree. And I have a friend who's a lawyer, and it's like he's been a lawyer for like 30 years, and now he's like, you know what? I don't even like being a lawyer. But
Exactly.
once you have the law degree, you're kind of like, well, I'm like, once I pass the bar, I'm kind of on the train. And
Right.
it's hard. How do you go against the train if you got the certification, you got the bar, you're certified, you actually got the degree, you're in the office, you're doing the work. And then you come to realize, you know what? I really want to play my Les Paul all day. I really don't want to do this.
No, exactly. And that takes courage to say that and to live into that. So, but even through my coaching program, a lot of people going through the program at the same time with me were lawyer. One was a lawyer transitioning to become a coach. That's a big leap. One was a biochemist becoming a coach. One was a psychologist who says, I don't want to do psychology, I want to do coaching. And so there was a lot of people going through similar transitions as me at the time, which was very comforting. To have a community of people who support you, like-minded individuals going through something similar is a key to success. It's definitely part of the winning formula, if you will, because not everyone in your immediate circle is going to understand. Like we said, there are certain external expectations of what you're supposed to do. And especially once you start living that self, right? Once I was earning the corporate salary as a VP. I was living that lifestyle. So that's the box people put me in, to your point. Like, well, that's what you do. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do something else. And they'd call you crazy because they're like, you know what you're giving up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the one thing they threw at me is like, well, look at this, because the company's 30 years old, my family business, and it's going to be sustainable for the next 30. So like, you're giving up job
A lot.
security, you're giving
Yeah,
up
a lot.
money, you're giving up, independent. I'm like, so what? So what?
Right, that's the risk. Like, the problem I think is a lot of times, like, people, you think about the vulnerability and being your authentic self. It's risk. It's somewhat risky because you could be, you can be, comfortable. I think we all kind of crave, um, like something that's safe. Like
Yeah.
our bodies are trying to like design to stay away from like the saber-toothed tiger or the wolf at the door. In modern society, that could be trying something that's like risky versus trying like a known thing, right? So you have like in music, we have these things like newfound sounds, like no known sounds.
Mm.
If you go toward the newfound sounds, you're taking a risk because nobody's heard that. There's no
Yeah.
loop, there's no drum that anybody ever heard.
You don't
And
know if it's
so
going to stick.
you don't know if anybody's going to really resonate. So it's safer to take a sample or a loop of something that's already been done and change it around a little bit than to actually try to do something radically different.
Mm.
And so when you push it and you're on the kind of bleeding edge, you run the risk of not getting, immediate adoption of what you're doing, but you might be soul satisfied. So are you, if you're satisfied, in your spirit, in your soul, in your mind, and like, yeah, I don't care. I'm gonna do it because I feel like doing this, and then maybe people will come to me if I believe in it, and then you figure out things. But like a lot of people are scared to even make that move.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, survival instinct is all about security, right? And that's who we are at a primal level, is just to survive and to be safe and to take care of your family, right? Your little nest. But we've evolved since then, and it's okay to explore, it's okay to try something new, it's okay to step out of your comfort zone. In fact, the cliche is, the best parts of life are lived outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
And it's true. I can say, when people ask me how are things going, the first thing I say is I'm having fun. I would have never said that in the corporate world. The first thing you do is having fun. No, I'm busy. I'm busy.
yeah,
There's always something to do. I'm busy. That's the first thing you ask people. How things these days? It's busy, man. And now I say I'm having fun. I'm like, you're having fun? Work's not supposed to be fun. Who says?
yeah. That's the thing. Like if you do what you really are, you'll actually be so happy. And like, if you like once you decide you're gonna live like the creative life or you're gonna do something that you're very passionate about, it's not like you're phoning it in. Like if you're going in and you're an actor or you're a
Mhm.
CPA, it's like, okay, I know how to do this, but I'm kind of phoning it in. It become like muscle memory, but I'm not really excited by it. Like when you get out of work, maybe you're excited because you work on your Mustang and then you
Yeah,
go join the sports car association and you drive at Lime Rock, and that's what really kicks you off. You'd rather do that all the time, but you can't. Like so you don't think you can, so you do the base job. But what if you actually could do that Lime Rock thing as your
yeah.
main thing? What if
And
you actually start to do that?
for some people, they think it's so far out of reach, but they don't even try it because they're scared of being rejected or failing. And then people in their immediate circle will say, "Well, told you, you shouldn't have done that. That was silly." But that also says a lot about the people we surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because sometimes you can lose friends, like, if you start to, actualize and change, like, if you start to not just be who you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and that's who all your friends know you as that person, then suddenly you radically shift, and they're like, "What? What does this
Exactly.
person do?" It's like you might lose some of the people that were around you, but you're gonna gain from the law of attraction the people that are around that kinda not need to be around you now because you're in a different space.
Yeah, it's the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. People in a fixed mindset don't want things to change, but they're not necessarily the most fulfilled people, and they're living in that comfort space. And look, it's not to say that everything when you do live into that, no, it's not to say that everything's comfortable. You have to get very comfortable with the uncomfortable. Let's paint that picture very clear. It is uncomfortable, but you're going to learn so much about yourself. I've learned so much about myself through this transition, really at a root level of who I am, and I build off that. You know, I'm working towards a better version of myself, and my benchmark was yesterday. Am I better than I was yesterday? Yes, I have a vision of what I want 10 years from now. I think that's healthy to, visualize and try to materialize what's happening or mentalize. But who I was yesterday is my competition. And that's it.
Yeah,
As
that's a
long as I'm
good.
doing better every day, I'm that person I'm going to be in 10 years is going to be a phenomenal human being as long as I keep evolving.
Well, that's a really doable way to think about it because if you get these people got the all or nothing, or they try to plan it out to the nth degree, not that you shouldn't plan things out, but if you're wanting to go from 0 to 100 and it's unrealistic because it's not like, can you consistently put that effort in? And then if you fail, are you going to give up? So I think is that the person that is consistent and knows they can continually make improvements over time, maybe they're not super large, but they continually go upward.
Yeah.
And not that you might not take a hit because you could, because we're humans. But the idea is that you're going to respond to that, have a lesson learned, and keep on trying to do a trajectory that's going up.
Yeah.
Right.
The goal is small steps every day, because when you do have those setbacks, and they're going to happen, there'll be smaller setbacks versus if you try to take a giant leap and then you have a setback, it's going to be a giant setback. And then you're deflated, you lose your motivation. And then you start, we all have self limiting beliefs, they happen. But it's to be able to label them and say, okay, I know exactly what's happening here and moving past it. And again, the community plays a huge, huge support in that. But it's all about taking small steps every day. And as long as you keep moving forward, even if you do have a setback, it's a knock on the chin. It's not a blow.
So, what are the kind of basic like building block steps that somebody should take when they're trying to do a significant career shift? I know it's probably dependent on the individual and what
Yeah.
their goals are, but they're kind of a high level.
Yes. So again, like I mentioned, the bold move here is getting in touch with who they are and what makes them happy. And that takes time. You have to be very honest and very vulnerable. Vulnerability is one of my corporate values. It's one of my personal values. I think it's a strength that people don't recognize. Vulnerability is usually classified as a weakness, but it's not. It's a massive strength to be able to be vulnerable and say, this is who I am at my core, and this is what I want to do, and this is what brings me fulfillment. And I'm trying to, when I work with people, I bring them away from the traditional metrics of success, and I'm bringing them into what is fulfillment to you. And for everyone, that answer is going to be different. What fulfills you? And like you asked me, what motivates you? Me, it's connections, building people, meeting people. This is what drives me. So I'm building off that. That's my direction. So that's the very first step. That's the first building block, is allow yourself to be vulnerable, allow yourself to soul search, find out who you are, what your values are, and what makes you happy. At the end of the day, let's assume money is not the problem, right? Let's assume you have all the money in the world and you could be happy tomorrow. What are you doing? And most people are going to say, it's not what I'm doing today. And
Mhm.
so, make that shift. That's the first thing, because it's all in the mind. It's all a mindset shift.
Yeah,
It's,
mindset shift. Yeah, that's very important from what
it,
I've heard.
it's imperative, because that's what drives you. That's what motivates you. That's what we're beings of emotion and logic. And so you need to be able to manage that. You need to be able to be self-aware and yet self-regulate yourself. So once you've done that first building block of getting to know what it is that make you happy, you have to identify what your obstacles and challenges are, and what makes you scared.
Mhm.
Where's your points of fear? Because that's what holds us back, is our fear. And we need to address those points. Sometimes it could be fear of disappointing a loved one. Some it could be fear of not providing for my family. Some could be fear of failure. It could be fear of something else. So we need to address each one of those, isolate them, and create rational thoughts around them to say, are you going to die? Is it a life or death situation? Because again, we're working about survival here. Let's isolate the challenges and let's address each one individually. Once you do that, now you start building some confidence. And when you build confidence, you build momentum. And then that first actionable step is saying, okay, maybe I need to do a certification to get, educated in this field, or maybe I just need to speak to a recruiter to see what else is out there, or maybe I need to work with a coach, or maybe that first actionable step becomes a lot more in reach and feasible and less daunting when you have that positive momentum based on the confidence that you've built thus far. But it starts with self. It all starts with self.
Yeah, a lot of times you just have to take the step to get out of the comfort zone and know that that's not necessarily going to be easy, you know. And a lot of people think that people who are very successful that somehow that happened easily, and they don't understand all the steps that they took to get there. Like you think about, you know, if you're like in software design, how many iterations we have? We have like hundreds of iterations of something before it hits the market. The first iterations are like nowhere near what we end up putting out. And so is that a failure? Is that just like that's our process, an iterative kind of process? And we understand that sometimes we have accidents. We have like an inventor. We get a happy accident, which actually the outcome is not what we were supposed to be doing. But
Yeah.
we actually find something that's actually better than what we were planned to do. And then we have the kind of drive to say, hey, you know, management, this is actually better than what you wanted to do. We should actually work on this. And in some places, like you can't do that because
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I got to stay on track. I can't even tell them about that. And it's so cool when you're actually in an environment that's conducive that if you have these happy accidents or these kind of miracle moments that just happen, that you kind of feel like, oh, I'm in the right place because they actually hear me. They hear what we're doing and you can go. So you can kind of feel like if you're not being listened to, you're not feeling that people are responding to you, that you're not being able to actualize, then you're probably not in the right position.
Yeah, well, that environment's not conducive for anything. And then you're talking about psychological safety, so people coming in and not fear of doing something wrong and having a consequence against it, that punishes them, right? That's and so most people don't even try because they're scared of the consequence. And that's actually maybe a separate topic, but one of the corporate programs that I offer is bringing vulnerability into the workplace to normalize conversations of, hey, we're human beings, we have personal lives. There is no leave your personal at home and come to work. Is I'm come as a this is a one size fits all package, and I come in as I am, and it's normalizing conversations about our lives with our peers, with our supervisors, to bring the human into the workplace, and which talks about allowing more safety, more trust, and builds on co-worker relationships and communication. So that's actually something I do because, to your point, there's like I read a statistic on Gallup yesterday that said 51% of people are either actively looking for a new job or considering looking for a new job. 51%. That's a global statistic, but it's pretty much the same
Yeah.
in North America. And the number one reason, number one cause is the workplace environment. People
Yeah.
don't
Toxic.
feel
Yeah.
it's toxic, right? Toxic workplace. And they don't have friends. They're not building friends because it's discouraged to have social talk there. Psychological safety is a big one. There's a bunch of factors that talk about why people aren't happy where they are, and that's a problem. We spend a third of our life at work.
At work. Yeah. Yeah. It's a
We
big,
should we should be enjoying it, and it's our healthy years. We start work, say in our 20s, and we work till our 60s, sometimes 70s. And if you're not happy, that's a problem.
well, sometimes like management and the structure of the company is, you know, sometimes has this top down
100%.
structure.
It
And
is.
then they'll, and the thing is, sometimes they're kind of like, okay, they want to sell that they want creative people, but they put people in the box. They measure people on the bell curve.
Yeah.
So, like Einstein, if you measured him, he got bad grades in math, but he's a brilliant physicist. So, if you use the wrong measurement tool, and a lot of times what I've seen in corporate, I've worked with a lot of Fortune 500 companies for like 30 years. A lot of times, like the measures they have aren't measuring the people right, and they got the people in the wrong roles. Those
Yeah.
people are not even happy. Most of the time, they're trying to leave, or they don't know how to leave, but they want to get out. And because they got the architect in the manager role, and he really doesn't want to be a manager, he needs to be an architect. But he moved up, and now he's stuck, and you're acting like that's where you should go. Well, maybe that's not where you should go. So they don't have the right fit, and then people don't push it because they say, "Oh, that's where I'm supposed to go." Well, sometimes you don't. You know, the trajectories are kind of out of sync with who the people are, and you know that's just a high level of what I've seen. But I think that overall, I
No,
think a lot of people
and
can
you're
kind
you're
of see the parallel.
you're 100% accurate. I mean, I've seen people be promoted who to a leadership position or a management position. We'll call management because leader, anyone could be a leader, but a management position, and they've never worked with managing people before, and they had no people skills, and it flatlined. It flatlined. It was a disaster because you're hiring the wrong person for the wrong reasons. And sometimes people accept promotions because they believe that's their next step. Based on social construct, I'm promoted. I'm the most senior. I have the most experience. I was offered a promotion. I'm going to take it. But consider, you're taking it. Are you going to be happy in that position? Some people just take it because that's the next logical step in their career path. But some people are very happy doing X. There's no reason why you need to do Y. You're happy doing X. You can stay there your whole life if you want. Doesn't mean you can't grow with your salary. Doesn't mean you can't grow, different responsibilities in different ways. But social contract says if you've been there a certain time, you should be next in line for that promotion. And
Yeah.
that's part of the problem, because people aren't, again, coming back to themselves saying, do I want that? Is it worth it for me? And what do I have to sacrifice to be able to fill their expectation of me versus my own?
Yeah, 'cause you're totally out of phase with who you are. Like you're not in, like, in terms of music, like you're in a dissonant noise, kind of discordant. You're not in harmony, right? Because
Yeah.
you like in harmony, you may be the architect, and maybe your overall role is that you could be the VP of architecture, but if they throw you as the director of the information security department, like,
It's a
well, that has
risk.
nothing to do with what you know how to do or what you even like. And then you've
Exactly.
been put in that role and you're not even the right guy. And so, yeah, it's so many mismatches. And people are like, well, how come we're not getting our budget? Like, how come we're not hitting this goal? It's like we got the wrong people. Like, I come in as a consultant a lot of times. So I
Mm.
can come in and come out and I can do assessments.
Yeah.
And it's kind of why I changed my role. Is like, I'm not in one organization for life. I bounce around and I give consulting advice so I can see parallels between different industries or similar industries or totally different industries. And so I can come in and give a point of view that will be listened to. And then sometimes I've told them, it's like you're not listening to your own people, which is
Mhm.
part of the problem. You're not even listening to anything coming off the floor, not anything coming from your engineers. It's not coming. You're not getting anything from multiple levels, and you're wondering why there's all this discordance. Why you're not allowing them to actually be happy or feel fulfilled.
The majority of problems that occur, whether it be personally or professionally, comes from some sort of breakdown in communication, right? It comes from a lack of communication, no communication, misinterpretation, misunderstanding, didn't use the right language, and received the wrong way. They did an email instead of it. Like, there's so many breakdowns in communication that is so simplistic, because we're able to talk, we're able to express ourselves, but it's seen as a sign of weakness if you complain, or if you bring something up, or if you talk from a person, say, I'm feeling anxious today, I'm feeling off today. Again, that vulnerability. And then the people are like, don't give it to them. They're always anxious. But you don't even know what. First off, anxiety is a blanket statement, because anxiety is not the feeling you're actually feeling. There's a root cause.
Causing
That's a
Yeah,
symptom. That's
yeah,
a
the
symptom
symptom
of the
of
root
the
cause.
cause.
So a lot of
Yeah,
leaders focus on the symptom, not the root cause. But again, it's all about communicating what you want, how you want it, when you want it, where you want it, and why you want it. Like, it's a it's a base fundamental. So a lot of the corporate side of things that I do is really focusing on improving communication between the employees, who are your number one asset. Your company, whether you're a service company or a production company, I don't care. Your asset is your employee,
mhm,
and if you don't take care of them, you don't have a business. So
yeah. I
be
mean,
in service of your people.
sometimes people just think of the people in their company as like widgets or people they can just move around and don't understand like the skill level of the people on the floor. Like if you underestimate or don't actually appreciate the level of skill, eventually that your core, you know, core capability is going to probably walk out the door, and
100%.
and then you're going to wonder why now suddenly your quality drops down, or
Or
all these,
worse, they stay and they're disgruntled.
yeah,
If you walk out the door, that's a bad situation. But what's worse is if they stay and they're
yeah.
complacent, they're disengaged, and they don't care because you don't care, and now they stay there for the next 10 years. That's the
Oh,
worst you can do, because that's toxic. That
well,
spreads
yeah,
across
they're
your entire
phoning
workplace.
it. Yeah,
They're
they're
phoning it
phoning
in.
it. Yeah, and they don't actually feel like it's worth it putting 110%. When they first got there, they put 110%, and it drops down to 70%, and fit 60 and 50 and then 30,
Exactly.
and then they stay there, and then like, oh, diminishing. capability, over
Exactly.
time. And then you're like, well, what happened?
Yeah,
But
and it's
yeah, it's just
unfortunate for the
interesting.
individual as well, because they bring that home, right, and it affects their home life too, and then they're not the best version of themselves for their families and for their friends and their kids and whatever it may be. Like that doesn't stop at the door of the corporate workplace, which is where a lot of people fail to see that, executives and leaders, is that those
Mm,
individuals go home and they're not their happiest selves, and
yeah, you're
so
talking about the societal impact of the macrocosm, right?
yeah,
So once you have, like, I was into sociology, that was my major, but the idea, like, that you can have a microcosm level individual thing, and then they bring it back to their house, they bring it back to their overall community, how they interact in their community, and then if they're in groups, and then these people will all get the same mindset, and then they're driven to by the same mindsets, and it just perpetuates, like, in terms of like vibes. Bad vibes perpetuate bad vibes,
mhm,
and then you get the law of attraction, and you get drawn into disgruntledness and resentments instead of being more productive and trying to bring the future. You're just focused on the past, and you're not trying to grow. You're not in that growth mindset. So
exactly.
if you get around people who are not in the growth mindset, then it perpetuates you that all these people are not in the growth mindset, and they perpetuate negative actions or
Yeah,
non-actions that are negative in themselves.
yeah,
So yeah, it's kind of a sociological
that's spot on.
spot. But maybe from some life lessons, I like to get people to maybe give examples. Are there three, like, lessons learned that are really critical to you? And I know it's like you're picking out of the hat, like, three, but it kind of gets to, like, maybe a focus that you've seen in bold moves coaching that you can kind of relate to the audience. Maybe three really good life examples, lessons
You,
learned, or things like that.
you mean like commonalities of people
Yeah.
who have transitioned from careers?
Or maybe just in terms of a process, or in terms of your bold moves coaching, or maybe an example of people that you've helped to they change their mindset or change, grow.
That's a great question. I guess the what I can offer the listeners is using a coach approach. So, what makes coaching so unique versus other disciplines like consulting, therapy, counseling, etc. As a coach, you partner with your client, and you never. We don't know the answers. We don't assume to know the answers. We don't give advice. It's non-directional. So everything is in service of the client, and so we remain curious and we ask questions to help people find their own empowerment, right? Their own direction in life, their own answers for their own environments and their own context. We don't know where you're coming from, who you know, what's affecting you, unless you share it with us. And so by doing this, by using this coach approach, which is for me, it's just so powerful and profound, is you're able to get through really tough situations. And some that I've worked with is it's all about people. Life is a people business. And it's about the connections you make with your friends, your family, your coworkers, and relationships are so important. And again, the base of that is being vulnerable in communication. So some of the people I've helped have gone through transitions, whether it be career or personal transitions of their own, and they have to be honest with themselves, but you have to be ready for the change.
Hmm.
If you're not ready for change, you're not going to make change. It's as simple as that. And again, it's a mindset. You need to be saying enough is enough. I deserve better. I want better, and I'm going to do something about it. And it's okay not to know what that thing is. That's actually very quite normal. But speaking to someone, whether it be a coach or not, speak to someone to get that first step and say offload on someone and say this is everything I'm going through right now, and I need someone to kind of clear that up into a nice box for me so I can take my first step. And that's just step one. That is the I don't care what you're going through. That is step one, is just really coming to that realization that you've had enough and you're ready for change, despite whether you know where it's going to go or not. The second thing is I'm debating between two things.
Yeah, that's okay.
The second thing is again making sure that whatever it is that you do is in line with your values,
Hmm.
and that's so important because if you're not living in integrity, it's not going to be sustainable, or you're always going to have a friction point, or you're always going to have this reoccurrence of I'm unhappy and I don't know why, or I can't get, I'm not feeling motivated. And motivated is about action. When the more action you take in life, the more motivated you get and the more momentum you build. But if you're living against your values or living against your integrity, then that's always going to be your sticking point. So when you're ready to make that action move, make sure you're making it into your values. Most people don't know what those are the first time you ask them.
Hmm.
What are your personal values? And try and limit it to 5, because they'll come up with 10, 15. You say, no, take them. A lot of them can be grouped, bring them back down to your 5 core values. And this is your foundation. All the decisions you make, this is like your compass. All the decisions you make are in the direction of your values. That's
Yeah,
going to actually limit their horizon. Say, wow, there's so many opportunities. But once you actually limit it to your values, you're like, oh, it's a little bit more clear.
more
And
clear.
then integrate it with what makes you happy. What's that fulfillment? What's going to put a smile on your face? What makes you tick as an individual? And there's some people who love being accountants. I know people, when they get crunched into the numbers, they're in the
Oh
state of
yeah,
flow and they're
I've
gone.
run into them.
I've worked with them myself. They're for everyone, it's going to be something different. It's not going to be obvious, but that's your direction. So again, being vulnerable, coming to the self-awareness, living into your values, and then finding that thing that makes you fulfilled. And again, with all the people I've worked with at Bold Moves, all my clients, that has been a common recipe. Whether you're going through a relationship, leaving a bad relationship, changing careers, even going for that promotion and trying to figure out if you want to take it. This is the foundation to any change.
I think it's interesting because I was reading one of your points or questions you like to answer is like aligning those personal values and you indicate also passion, because
Yeah,
sometimes there's some people are kind of they like lost the passion. So like you have your values, but also like what are you really keyed into from a passion point? And I think a lot of times it's easy for like artists. We're easy to kind of understand because like art is our passion, whether you're a photographer, painter, musician, theater person, film. You're doing that work because it's like that is like life to you.
yeah,
You do it whether you make money at it or not. You just do it because you're like so in tune with it. And it happens to be that a lot of times when you're in sync, the opportunities do allow you to actually be successful monetarily. But you're doing it because it's like is your passion work. If you can find something like that that aligns with your values, then you're kind of like you're at that like total synchronicity with everything you want to be and actualize to where you could be or can be or continually improve, right?
work doesn't feel like work, it feels like play. But you touch on something important here is, and most artists have this, continuous self-improvement. You're continuously investing into your skill set, into your craft. It's not stagnant. You're not playing the same thing over and over. A lot of musicians play multiple instruments because there's a sense of mastery of I want to
Yeah,
continue challenging myself and continue to play around with different things. And a lot of people don't, once they get into the workforce, other than the trainings they get offered by their employer, they're not continuously enveloped into it. They're not playing around with different subjects. They're not, taking these certification programs after work because they're tired. They have a life too. They have things they want to get back to. But it's important to continuously self improve in
hmm
whatever you're doing, and that's an evolution. So your passion today may not be the same passion in 10 years. It will have
yeah,
evolved. It might still be in the same. It might still be in the realm of art, to your point, but it's going to have evolved. It's not going to stay the same.
yeah. I mean, you move from watercolors to like pastels to inks. You move different type of filmmaking. In musician, you might move from like bebop to fusion.
Right?
And
Exactly.
then it's like a totally different set. And a lot of times, like there was a famous thing I always keep on bringing up, but Bowie said, is like in his career path, he always felt like he had to tread water to do something he wasn't totally comfortable with. An example of moving from Ziggy Stardust, this rock kind of fantasy thing, to doing like Aladdin Sane and these other characters. But at some points, he moved into like soul music and was singing with Luther Vandross,
Yeah.
different skill set than what he was doing with Ziggy. So he had to get to a different type of singing. And he wasn't really there, but he felt like, why am I going to tread water because I need to be there? I'm not going to be successful the first couple of songs that we demo. I'm going to get better. And he
Yeah.
always felt the need to kind of tread water because that's how I'm gonna, actualize. I need to change. And you could see he would continually shape shifting into these different forms over time. And a lot of the great artists, you see that they
Mhm.
move from one phase to the next, and the last phase, next phase is not anything like the phase they were in. And sometimes they lose fans because they're like, I only like the Ziggy phase.
Exactly.
I don't like the Thin White Duke phase. I don't like Aladdin Sane. I don't like it. So yeah, but that's not the concern. It's like that's where I am. That's as the artist, I'm going to go to the other phase because that's where my head's at.
They're leaning into it. They're courageous enough to lean into that, and it goes full circle with what we said earlier, which is when you first start something, you're not going to be the best at it. It's not going to be great for the majority, other than those natural skilled people. I know a few who just they can do anything when they try it for the first time, but for the most part, the first time you attempt something isn't going to be your best. You're going to improve over time, but to have the courage to try, right? Most people don't try to have the courage to try it. And I think that's what's important here is that always continue to evolve yourself, stay in that growth mindset, and you're going to find a better version of yourself. Again, comparing it to yesterday. If I'm the same I was yesterday, as it wasn't a good day, I need to do
Mhm.
something a little bit better.
Yeah, it's like the fear factor because everything evolves, things get exponentially change, like in tech. Like I started in the industry, it was mainframe. Now we're blockchain AI. It shifts all the time. In order to be where I am, I have to continually learn. I never stop having to get certifications and learn new tech. And if you're in tech, that's just the nature of the game. But there are some people like I'm on the assembly line. I use this machine. This is all I want to do. And well, pretty soon the robot might do that,
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
or the AI is going to do that. So you're going to eventually get forced to get out of that. And that's kind of like that we're going to have a big social problem in the future if people have this kind of limited mindset or think the world's getting ready to shift exponentially because of AI and robotics and automation. And if people don't learn how to reinvent themselves and think that it's impossible, you could get left behind.
Yeah, it's about adaptability and resilience.
Yeah, so I mean, think like a lot of people need to really start. The idea of the looking glass self from a poet is like, what does that mean? Like the self examination that the great poets like Blake and Wordsworth and Keats and all they would look at. Try to understand. Do I have imposter syndrome? Do try to understand. Do I have this like self hate? And then dive into it and try to address it. Try to understand your weaknesses and get into it and understand how you could actually pull yourself out of it, out of a loop.
Exactly. Yeah, imposter syndrome is very common, obviously, and it's again an umbrella statement. What is the root cause? That's a symptom. I'm feeling imposter, but what is the root symptom? And often it comes down to the lack of confidence or lack of preparation. I don't feel like I'm prepared for this. And like you just mentioned, like when the skill set and the challenge are off, that's usually when that happens. Because if the challenge is high and your skill is low, well, you're underqualified, and so you're overwhelmed. But the opposite, when your skill is high and the challenge is low, well, you're bored. So you got to find that meat spot of my skill set versus my challenge, and hopefully those are constantly growing at the same rate.
Yeah,
You're increasing your challenges as you're increasing your skill set, and that's how you stay in a state of flow. That's the
yeah,
sweet spot. If you can reach a state of flow every day, you're living a great life.
yeah. Because it's like the challenge is incrementally difficult, and how much difficulty can you handle individually? You have to see. But if,
Yeah,
like you said, if you can actually take on incremental change at a pace that you can actually sustain, then you're going to be a good place, right?
yeah,
But if you're in this person wants to do like massive leaps and it doesn't work, and then you get jaded, and you're like, oh, I can't do it. Like it's kind of like the turtle versus the hare.
the hair. Yeah,
It's like over time, it's like sometimes the turtle's gonna win because like
you're all over the place. Yeah, exactly.
but that's not how a lot of times we want to get instant gratification in today's society. We want instant results. We want 10 step, I'm done, and not realize like you need to have these strategies and probably use them for the into the next phase of your life because usually it's not an easy answer. There's like you have to have some capability, or you have that fad diet that doesn't work. You know,
Yeah,
because it's not you can't stay on it. It's not sustainable.
it's not sustainable. 100%.
So maybe from your life, one of the things I like to ask people about are there maybe a couple of things, three things about you that people wouldn't expect that maybe you could relate to the audience that would be surprising to them based on what we've been talking about today.
Three things they wouldn't expect.
From you, yeah.
Um, yeah, from me, obviously. Um, Three things about me they wouldn't expect by looking at me in our conversation over the last 40 minutes. Let me think. I'm kind of a brain science nerd. I love learning about the brain and how our brains work, not only from a neuroscience standpoint, but also I love comedy. So it's psychology of humor and how to use humor as a tool to of influence. And I use it as a method of diffusing situations, right? And to still pack on a powerful message, but in a nice sandwich of comedy where people can digest it easier. And so humor used in both personal and professional workplace is quite something I'm fascinated with, and
Mhm.
something I've applied to my professional life thus far, and it's done quite wonders for me because it also helps build connections, a bunch of health benefits of working in that environment. So I guess neuroscience and psychology of humor would be one. Um, I I hated construction. I never wanted to work in construction. I don't know if I mentioned that. So being the VP of a construction company is ironic because I never wanted to work in construction. And even as I worked there, I have an appreciation for it. Don't get me wrong, there's a difference. But definitely never once did I wake up happy to go. We did retail construction. So it was building the interior fit ups of retail stores across Canada, malls, shopping
Mhm.
malls, etc. Never once did I wake up proud that I got to go do that. And it kept me there for 16 years. So something that maybe people can reflect on is, just because you're there and just because you're good at something doesn't mean that's what you should be doing. That's the takeaway
Mhm.
from that. And it was a friend who told me that, actually, just because you're good at something doesn't mean that's what you should be doing. And that's quite profound. So it's important to ask yourself that question. Am I just doing what I'm doing just because it's in the motions of what I'm used to doing? The third one, a really good question. I really should have thought of this. Um, for me, I have two young daughters, 7 and 6. I've been married 12 years, been with my wife for 20 since we're high school sweethearts. Um, the pandemic for me was a bit of a blessing and a curse for everyone, right? But there's a blessing for me because it brought me home to my family physically, right? We were all forced to work from home. And it was at that moment I realized that I was missing all the small moments. I was catching the big ones, but I was missing all the small ones. And
Mhm.
it's the small ones in life that really matter. I equate it to the example of my daughter riding her bike, learning to ride her bike. And if
Mhm.
I would have just got home and saw her riding her bike, I would have been a proud dad, and I would have said, "Hey, I made it for you to ride your bike," and it would have been great. But what I really got to experience was her resilience and determination of her falling 1,000 times to the
Yeah.
point where the bike was mangled at the end. And it was a
Oh
brand
my.
new bike. It was a brand new bike, but she didn't want any help, and she kept falling. She kept getting up and kept falling, and kept getting up. And in that moment, I realized, and this was during the pandemic, I realized that is the beauty of life. It's those small moments of watching people push through in a determined mindset to say, I'm going to do something, and they do it. And so the small moments are what matters in life. So, um, don't know if that's really in line with your question, but I thought that
Yeah.
was something worth sharing. Is as a father, as a husband, and I can only offer that being present matters. It's again in line with what's true to me, which is relationships and connections, and it builds a beautiful bond. So, yeah, those are, I guess, are the three things I'd offer you.
Well, those are great points that you made, and I do find it interesting because I've heard this before that a lot of people feel like the kind of childlike innocence, like, well, when you're a child, you jump on that bike until you learn how to do it, you fall off, and it's not such a big deal. It seems like as you get to be an adult, it's harder to kind of have that bike, learning to ride a bike type of behavior coming from an adult. They're more
Mhm.
willing to stay, like, well, I'm not even going to try to ride that bike because I'm going to fall off. where the kid would do it like as many times as like I learned how to
Yeah.
do it. I did the same thing. I'm a child in the 70s, no helmet, no straps, anything. Learning to ride a bike, like falling off my Schwinn all the time until I
Yeah.
figured out how to do it. But it's like I know people today. I asked somebody to get in the mountain bike, and it's like, well, I can't do that. I'm not even going to try that.
And now you're
But
gonna try. Exactly. Or is even learning how to swim. My daughter, she learned how to swim. She, even when she couldn't, she'd still jump into the pool, like kind of full of trust and confidence. I can do it. And people, adults who don't know how to swim, they're not going to jump in the pool,
yeah, don't even try it.
even if they can touch the bottom.
Yeah, they won't go to the deep side. Maybe they'll be in the shallows. They just bounce around. Like, but I'm not even going to try the deep end. Where a young kid is like, well, I'll try that. No
Yep.
problem. Just go do it. As a how do as a coach, when you see that, like you mentioned the comedy to try to get rid of stress and try to make things go down easier. That sounds like that's a really interesting thing that I would kind of maybe dive into at the end of this is like when you saw that how comedy allowed you to make some traction. You said you started to incorporate it in what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I noticed is it makes people feel safe. When you're able to make them laugh, their guard comes down, the barriers come down, and they feel good, right? I mean, it's releasing chemicals in your body that make you feel good. You feel good. Your guard is down, and now you have them at their essence. You have them at who they are, and so the conversations after that are very transparent. They're very open, and back to that, a sense of vulnerability. So, being an executive, what I was doing, and I mean, we had 70 employees in our company, 35 in the office, and when I walk around and I was just kind of like one of them. It was just I would joke around, appropriately, of course,
Yeah,
but just making fun of myself or being the first one to make kind of a joke that make everyone laugh. People came to me like, "You make us feel so like safe and at home here and at peace. Like it's enjoyable to come here because you're creating a light environment." But we still got things done. We're very
yeah,
productive. We're a growing company. Like I don't focus on the result. I focus on the process, and the process needs to be enjoyable for people to want to do it. And if you can do that, the result is going to be beneficial. you
yeah.
know?
That's interesting because like if you like when I was with some businesses that were startups in Cambridge, they had pool tables and tennis tables and video game machines, pinball machines. They had break rooms, and they had it set up so work was kind of fun. And people would like coming from insurance companies and banks would look in like, what? Why are the employees fooling around?
Yeah.
And they didn't get that these were people that were doing crazy hours, but because you made the workplace fun, that they have a treadmill at their desk. They have these, pinball machines and video games. It's not that they were going to waste all their time doing that. It just gave them places to kind of shake things off and recharge. And then they put more time in because it was a comfortable, like safe, fun place to be.
Yeah.
So then their mind started coming up with really good ideas. And they're like, well, how do these guys with these type of companies do that? Because they understand that these are people, not just widgets in a desk. you know?
Well, it makes them feel like they're trusted too. If you see some of your employees taking a break, playing pool, having fun, having a conversation, what have you, and you don't address that, you let them do it. That's trust. I trust you're going to do what you need to do. I don't need to hold your hand through this. I hired you to do. You're a professional in your field, and you're going to get it done. And you'll be often surprised how much people actually deliver. That there's going to be a bad apple in every bunch who maybe takes abuse or
Yeah.
takes it for granted. But at the end of the day, the majority of people feel if you trust them, it's like this whole working from home thing. If you trust people who work from home, you're going to get positive results. It's all based on trust.
Yeah.
But treat people the way you want to be treated, right?
Yeah. Cause we found like in our IT business that people were actually putting more hours, the guys are working in from home than the people who are in the office.
Yeah.
Because they would take long lunches and breaks and this and that. But the people working from home, they're doing like 12, 14 hours and putting in time and getting things done. You're like, wow, it's not what some of the executives thought.
No,
Well, they're
nor is
wasting
it
time.
necessarily what they want. You don't want your employees doing 12, 14-hour days, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it was the reality. I mean, the pandemic, I lived it firsthand. I was doing, it's too accessible to my house. It was
Yeah.
accessible.
You
So
don't stop. You got to learn
you
how to
don't,
stop. You have to stop yourself. Like
that's an
you
acquired
have to,
skill. Yeah.
yeah, you have to, a lot of people is like, oh, I get into this thing and I'm like, don't stop. And it's like you're balanced. You got to learn how to balance. Even though
Yes.
you're home, like you still need to get out and take a walk or take a break or take a coffee break or take a, some kind of meditation break. And you just, you just make that part of your life that, yeah, I'm going to take care of myself too,
Yeah.
not just this. And it's again, balance.
Well, it's, and just touching on that, it's your environment, right? So you got to make sure your environment is conducive for that work-life integration or work-life balance, whatever you want to call it. And I know that's hard for a lot of people because they might not have the physical space for it, where their laptop is on their kitchen table and that's where they're working from. But in my case here, I have an office closed, and when I'm done my day, I close my office and I don't go back. Like it's creating an environment, a physical space that's my workspace and this is my living space, and you try not to blend the two because that's where things get a little bit hazy.
Yeah, yeah. Then you're at work all day.
Your work is at your kitchen table, so you're eating where you work. You're at your desk. It's
Yeah,
that, and that's the pitfall for a lot of people. But I understand limitations, but you still have to try and
try to
create these
carve it out.
boundaries.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you can carve out boundaries and then learning how not to be a total people pleaser,
yeah.
because then you don't really solve it. You end up not being effective. If
Well,
you're
look,
too much of a people pleaser, then you got to learn how to kind of balance that out.
the neuroscience shows that you can do 4 to 5 hours of hard cognitive work a day, 4 to 5. So when you're doing 12, 14-hour days, you're actually not being productive.
Yeah.
You're going to get 4 or 5 hours of really good hard work done. You can maybe fill in the blanks with menial tasks that re-energize you a little bit. You need to take breaks, but 12, 14-hour days, you're actually not being more productive.
Yeah, yeah. Some of our programmers need to figure that out.
That's it.
I think what happens is that the code is like, I guess that it starts to begin diminishing returns, and then when we're quality checking, it's like, well, that's where that diminishing returns coming from because like they're thinking that the hours are going to equal the efficiency
Productivity.
of the code, and it's actually causing deficiencies in the code.
Yeah, well, that could be one of the reasons for sure. They also say multitasking, which is not possible. But the people who try to attempt multitasking lose up to 30% efficiency on their work. So it's better to focus on one thing at a time.
Hmm.
Anyways,
That's really interesting. We've had a lot of cool golden nuggets in this conversation, and I do appreciate it. We are getting close to the hour mark, and I do
fantastic.
want to mention your website again, so maybe you can tell people like if people click on boldmovescoaching.ca, what happens when they click on that and when they connect with you there.
Yeah, that's great. So when you click on my link, you get on my landing page, you'll see the services that I offer, which are corporate programs, career transition, and life coaching. Primarily, I also do executive coaching and public speaking. There is this area where you can reach out to me, get on my calendar, book a half hour, no cost, no obligation meeting, just so we can get to know each other, see if there's a connection, if we want to work together. You have access to my social media accounts on there as well. So you can check me out on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
Great, and we do encourage people again that is fully clickable. When we get off of the air right now, it will be on the Facebook, YouTube links that we have. And then later, when we're published on all the other podcast platforms that we're on, all the major ones like Apple and Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and Google. So, all those places you'll be able to do that wherever you feel comfortable listening or watching a podcast. I do want to thank you again for being a guest on the Family Like the Ghost podcast and have a great rest of the day or night.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you.